ended the last episode with an image, 500 contacts in your phone, and no one to call at 3 in the morning. But I want to say something important before we go further. Because that image is a compelling one, but it's not entirely honest. And that's exactly what this episode is about. Calling someone at 3 in the morning is not a test of genuine friendship. That person might have work at 6, sleep problems, their own crises you know nothing about. And if you're calling at night regularly, that's no longer about closeness, that's about something else. Real closeness isn't about someone's willingness to tolerate any inconvenience for you. It's about being seen, heard, understood, and that can happen at the most ordinary time of day. So where does that feeling come from? That there are plenty of people around, but no one to really talk to. That connections exist, but somehow they don't nourish. That you're surrounded by people and deeply lonely at the same time. That's what we're talking about today. Not whether social media and digital communication are bad. They're tools, and everything depends on how you use them. But why the modern world is structured in a way that produces more and more surface-level connections and fewer real ones. And why we so often choose breadth over depth without even noticing we're doing it. Let's start with a simple distinction that explains a lot. All of our social connections can be roughly divided into a few levels. There are acquaintances, people you recognize, know by name, can talk to about the weather or work. There are casual friends, people you're comfortable around, people you can spend an evening with, laugh with, catch up with. And there are close people, people you can tell what you actually think and feel, without fear of being misunderstood or judged. The problem with the modern world isn't that we have too few acquaintances and casual friends. We have enormous numbers of those: social media, co-working spaces, networking events, group chats, colleagues, classmates, neighbors. The problem is that these connections often exist only at the first 2 levels, and they create the illusion of a rich social life, behind which hides a real hunger for genuine closeness. Social psychology calls this the paradox of social oversaturation. The more weak ties a person has, the more acutely they may feel the deficit of strong ones. Because a lot of shallow interaction doesn't add up to one deep connection, just as 100 cups of weak tea don't replace one strong coffee. These are fundamentally different things, and one does not compensate for the other. But knowing this still doesn't answer the main question. Why does it happen? Why, with so many people around us, can't we, or don't we, build something deeper with any of them? Here I want to talk about something that rarely comes up in videos on this topic. About how culture, films, TV series, books, creates a very specific image of what genuine friendship and closeness are supposed to look like. And how that image, for all its appeal, genuinely gets in the way of building real relationships. Think of any popular show about friendship. There's a group of people who literally live inside each other's lives. They drop everything for the main character. They show up at the airport in the middle of the night. They deliver monologues about how important these relationships are. They make extraordinary sacrifices, sometimes ones they weren't even asked to make. It's beautiful, and sometimes genuinely moving, like that scene in The Avengers, where 2 people face an impossible choice, and one of them thinks, "I have no family, only colleagues to mourn me." That works because it raises a real existential question about the value of a life. But more often, closeness gets portrayed as a constant readiness for heroism. As if real friendship is measured by the scale of the sacrifice, and we absorb this. And we start using this template as a measuring stick without realizing it. If someone isn't willing to do something extraordinary for me, then this isn't real closeness. If I don't have a group of people who live and breathe my life, then something is wrong with me. I must be lonely. But wait, in real life, most people don't need nighttime rescue operations. Most crises get resolved not at 3 in the morning, but at a normal hour, through a conversation, a piece of advice, simply being present. And the person who listened to you on a Tuesday evening after work and helped you think something through. That's no less real closeness than someone who would have rushed over in the night. It's just a different kind of closeness, one without cinematic heroism. Here's what the romanticization of closeness does to us. It devalues what we actually have because it doesn't look like the movies. And it makes us feel lonely in places where there's actually no loneliness at all. But it would be dishonest to say that it's all down to romanticization and inflated expectations, because there are situations where loneliness in a crowd is not an illusion. It's a very real experience. I had one of those. At university, I found myself in a situation that was gradually becoming unbearable. There was a lecturer for my main subject, twice a week, unavoidable. His comments on my work were strange. Sometimes he'd publicly question whether I'd actually made the piece myself, as if I couldn't possibly have chosen those colors on my own. Sometimes he'd praise me in a way that felt more like mockery. Always in front of other students, and always in a way that looked to everyone else like a joke, like his sense of humor. I tried to talk about it with the people around me. People who lived nearby, studied nearby, ate nearby. And every time I heard the same thing, that's just how he is. That's his style. You're being too sensitive. Nobody said this with bad intentions. They simply didn't see what I was seeing. Or they saw it and didn't want to acknowledge it because doing so would have created discomfort for everyone. And that is real loneliness in a crowd. Not because there were no people around. There were plenty, but because there wasn't a single person who could say, "Yes, I understand what's happening." This is real. You're not imagining it. I lived inside that for 2 years, sleep-deprived, unable to think clearly. And this is the part that's striking to look back on. It never even occurred to me that I could simply leave the program. Just leave. When someone is in chronic stress and isolation, their thinking literally narrows. The most obvious solutions become invisible. When I was eventually removed from the program, what I felt was relief. Not grief, not shame. Relief, that tells you something. This story is about something important. Surface-level connections don't protect you in difficult moments, not because people are bad, but because to genuinely support someone, you need to genuinely know them, to see them, not just to be in the same room. Now the important question. If deep connections matter so much, why are there so few of them? Why, when we have the opportunity to build something real, do we so often stay at the surface? The first reason is the pace of modern life. Deep relationships take time, a lot of time. Repeated, unhurried, often unproductive by modern standards time. Time when nothing is happening. You're just sitting, talking, being quiet, talking again. The rhythm of contemporary life isn't very compatible with that. It's easier to have many light contacts that don't demand deep investment than a few heavier ones that demand actual presence. The second reason is the fear of vulnerability. Real closeness requires showing up as yourself, with your doubts, your fears, your contradictions, your less flattering thoughts. And that's risky. There's always the possibility of not being accepted, of being judged, of being rejected. And many people, often without even realizing it, prefer to stay at a safe distance, where nothing hurts but nothing is warm either. The third reason, and this is specific to our time, is the illusion of connection that social media creates. A like, a comment, watching someone's story. These are all actions the brain registers as social contact. We see people, they see us. There's response, there's acknowledgement, but it's not the same as a conversation in which you're actually heard. It's a substitute, and a convincing enough one that the brain quiets down for a while, but not nourishing enough to meet the real need for connection. Social media in itself isn't the problem. It's a tool. The problem arises when it becomes the primary or the only way to maintain connection with people, when messaging replaces meeting. When you know everything about someone's life from their posts, but have no idea how they actually feel. I want to pause on one idea that feels like the heart of all of this. Real connection is being seen, not the convenient version of you, not you on your good days, but you fully, including the moments when you're not at your best, when you're uncertain, when you don't have an answer. And not being fixed or dismissed or redirected toward something more positive, just accepted. This is a rare experience, and it's exactly what most people who complain of loneliness are missing, even when they have a large social circle. They don't want more people. They want to be seen by the people who are already there. The psychologist Irvin Yalom wrote about one of the fundamental existential needs of a human being, the need for a witness. Someone who knows you exist, who remembers your story, who can say, "I remember when you talked about that. I remember what matters to you." Without that witness, life feels like a tree falling in a forest with no one around. Was there a sound? Did it matter? And here is the important distinction between quantity and quality of connection. 10 people who know you superficially don't give you that feeling. One person who knows you genuinely does. This isn't about shrinking your social life to a minimum. It's about understanding what you're actually looking for and not confusing an active social life with real closeness. To close, I want to offer a more grounded, and I think more useful picture of what genuine closeness looks like in real life. It's not someone who will drop everything and come to you in the night, though that does happen in genuinely extreme situations. It's someone who remembers what you told them 3 months ago and asks how it turned out. Who notices when something's off with you, even when you say you're fine. Who can tell you an uncomfortable truth and does it with respect, not judgment. Who doesn't require you to always be in a good place and always be interesting. And this matters, who has their own life, who has boundaries, tiredness, their own priorities. Because healthy closeness isn't fusion, and it isn't round-the-clock availability. It's two separate people who choose to be present for each other, not because they can't function without one another, but because they want to. These kinds of relationships don't appear on their own and don't build quickly. They require time, repeated shared experience, a willingness to sometimes be vulnerable, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes imperfect, and a willingness to give the other person that same space, to be imperfect alongside you. How exactly to build this, especially when you're an adult and the old ways of making friends no longer work? That's the 4th and final episode in this series. As always, not for the right answer, but for the honest one. Writing them down is better. On your connections, think of 5 people you interact with most often. What level is each of them at acquaintance, casual friend, or someone close? Is there even one among them who knows you genuinely, not the convenient version, but you fully? If not, how long has it been that way? On the feeling of being seen, when did you last feel that you were truly heard, not just listened to, but understood? Who was that person, and what exactly did they do or say that created that feeling? If no moment comes to mind, what does that tell you? On romanticization, do you carry an image of what real friendship looks like, one your actual relationships don't seem to match? Where did that image come from? Films, childhood, other people's stories? Is it devaluing what you actually have? On vulnerability, is there someone in your life you could tell something genuinely uncomfortable about yourself, without being afraid of their reaction? If not, what exactly is in the way? Fear of judgment, a sense that no one is interested, a belief that you should handle things alone. On balance, right now, are you more likely to be missing closeness or missing time and space for yourself? Because these are very different problems that require very different solutions. Be honest with yourself on this one. We've looked at why there are so many surface-level connections and why they don't satisfy the real hunger for closeness. We've talked about how the romanticization of friendship gets in the way of appreciating what we have, and about what genuine closeness actually looks like, without heroism, but with presence. But there's a practical question left. one that many people find the hardest. When you're 20 and at university, connections seem to form on their own. A shared schedule, a dormitory, shared exams. But what do you do when you're 30 or 40? You've long since left those structures behind. Everyone has their own life and their own demands, and you know you want real closeness, but have no idea where to begin. That's the final episode. How to build deep relationships from scratch as an adult. What works, what doesn't, and why it's not as daunting as it seems. See you in the next one.